If you remember last time, I've been responding to a video that says 10 core Christian beliefs that Jesus never taught on. And in the previous video, we responded to the first core belief that Jesus never taught on, which was the concept of original sin. The argument there that Jesus never taught on original sin. We see it in Genesis and we see it in Paul. We don't see it in any other place, and we don't see it in Jesus specifically. Therefore, Jesus never taught on that. So go back and watch that video if you're interested in that response. But in this video, we're going to be responding to the second core belief that Jesus never taught on. And we're going to go back to the video and watch that and see if we can come up with a good response to that argument as well. And again, let me know your thoughts and how you would respond to it in a little bit more detail. So let's share the screen and we're going to go into it now.
Now, Jesus clearly taught that God was in him and the two were one. But Christianity says only Jesus. Don't you dare even think that you're one with God, because that's blasphemy. Even though Jesus real clearly said that just as I and the Father are one, Father, may they be one as we are one. I and them and you and me. So don't say that in church, because you'll get kicked out. But Jesus said it, and that's something that Christianity is way off on, I believe. And quantum physics, check out this video on the quantum field. Oneness that Jesus taught begins to make a lot of sense.
I'm definitely not going to go into the details of quantum physics because I am 100% not qualified and not researched on that area whatsoever. But what I do know a little bit on, I believe, and again, you can let me know in the comments if you agree or don't believe in what I'm saying, is to say that Jesus was teaching that we could be literally, ontologically one with God, just as Jesus is ontologically one with God, is so taking out of context and not the correct interpretation of what Jesus is actually saying there. I mean, we could maybe say it's a partial truth, but it just completely distorts the meaning that Jesus is actually trying to say here. For example, in John 17:21 through 23, again, the context is really important. In John's gospel, this is just before Jesus is about to be arrested and then taken to Pilate and eventually his crucifixion. He's almost giving a last full sermon to his disciples during the Last Supper. And he does say, he prays to the Father and says, Father, I pray that they may be one, even as we are one. So it's the even as bit that individuals like this kind of get really tied up on, and they think, well, Jesus and the Father are one, and he's praying to the Father that they would be one just as we are one as well. Therefore, Jesus must be teaching that he wants us to literally become like God, like deity. And I think that is a complete distortion of it. I think if you read the context behind it, what Jesus is clearly trying to say is that he wants us to be one with God in unity, just as Jesus is one with God in unity. But we're clearly not supposed to become like God in some ontological sense that we are to become like God. This is not some sort of theosis theology that Jesus is trying to come out with here. And also, you've got to remember the context of Jesus and the Jewish believers and what they would be believing in. They would never, as faithful Jewish monotheists, that they could ever say that they could be like God in that sense. That would be blasphemy. He's correct in that. That would be a blasphemous claim. In fact, that's one of the reasons why Jesus was taken to Pilate and crucified. It was a blasphemous claim to be like God, and for the Father to be literally Jesus's Father. Now, why can we call the Father our Father now? Well, again, it's not because we somehow become physical actual offspring of the Father, but we are now adopted into that family because of what Jesus has done. And we are to become one with him in that sense, that he in us and we are in him, and there is that level of unity in that. Also in John 14:15, there is a clear sign that we are to be obedient to the Father because of what Jesus has done for us. But this is a response, of course, to the amazing grace that was poured out on us, not in some sense that we are becoming divine or earning salvation. Again, there's a nuance to what Jesus is saying here. And this is why we have to be really careful when we read the New Testament, when we read any text, if it's a biblical text or a non-biblical text. We can't just take that, ignore the context, take it out, and then run with it and say, well, that must be what Jesus said. Jesus is one with the Father. We must be one with the Father. Therefore, we have to become like gods in some sense, or to become like God. We are to become like God in our character, in our holiness, in our unity as believers, in our unity to the will of the Father. But to say that Jesus was saying to us, this is the formulation that you need to go through in order to become like God, so you can become like me, fully God or truly God and truly man, it's a complete distortion of the context. And I think if we went into it in a little bit more detail, and I would encourage you to do that, and let me know in the comments about what you have been seeing in those same verses that this individual put on his screen, I think what we will see here is that it's a distortion of the context, is a distortion of the understanding. We clearly aren't to become like God in that sense of oneness, but we are to become like God and like the Father in the sense of unity, in the sense of obedience, and a sense of acceptance of what Jesus has done for us on the cross. So that's a short response to that core belief that Jesus never taught on. Again, I don't think it's looking at the context correctly, but let me know what you think down below in the comments, and let me know how you would respond as well. And in the next video, we'll look at the third core belief that Jesus supposedly never taught on.